Hi, my name's Simon Thorpe. I'm an emeritus research director with the CNRS, working at the Brain and Cognition Research Centre in Toulouse. And today I'd like to talk to you about IOUNet, which is a radical plan for reforming the global economy. I think we can all agree that our world is in crisis. I mean, one of the problems is that global debt now stands at $348 trillion, and that debt requires about $13 trillion of interest payments every year. And those interest payments are one of the reasons why the richest 1% of people on the planet own about 48% of all the resources. In addition, we need to find about $4.5 trillion every year to tackle climate change, and nobody really has any idea how to find that money. Another big problem is that AI and robotics is very likely going to prevent many people earning a living in the near future. And all of this means that basically we're doomed to a world of austerity because there won't be enough resources to pay for the things that we need. Is there a way out of this? Well, I'd like to argue that IOUNet could be a solution. It's a radical alternative to conventional economics, and it's built on human cooperation. Essentially, members of IOUNet send each other IOUs in what I call U's, this little circle with a dot in the middle of it, which is 1 minute of human effort. So people would send an IOU for work done by other people. The rate can be higher for people with skills or equipment to help them do the job that they're doing. The idea actually is quite old. I originally proposed this back in 2014 on my blog at a post called Eureka, How to Create Unlimited Amounts of Money Without Banks, the OM system. The idea is that people send IOUs to each other. They can be denominated in anything like euros or dollars or pounds. But importantly, the system starts with everybody at zero. When somebody sends an IOU, they become negative and the other person becomes positive, but the system itself is always at zero. There's never any actual money in the system. So, for instance, here we've got a little toy example with 10 people in a community. Initially, you have various IOUs have been sent, but you'll note that the builder owes the nurse 20 units, the nurse owes the hairdresser 20 units, and the hairdresser owes the builder 20 units. So if you think about it, this makes a loop, and they can all cancel out. And if you do this cancellation process lots of times, you can clean up this system here to one where there are only the net positions left. So, for instance, here after cancelling, the baker now owes nothing, but is owed 11 units here. And is therefore at net 11. But importantly, if you add up all the net positions, the system itself is always at zero. It can't be anything other than zero. So the idea was that you could do the system. The key is to find and eliminate these cycles as a way of simplifying the amount of debt in the system. And I wanted to scale this up to large networks. Within a few weeks, I'd already set up a system using Cyclos 4, which is an open source banking system, and had the system, with a website and everything. But it lacked the cycle cancellation mechanism, which I thought was vital. And for a couple of years, I was trying to find a solution to this, and I was working with a company called Ubiquat Technologies in Barcelona, but we didn't really get very far with this. And indeed, there was no progress made at all until 2025, when I got an account with Anthropic's Claude and asked Claude to help me try and set up the software. So back in October last year, with Claude, we managed to get hundreds of users and thousands of connections. And we showed that you could get rid of sort of 85% of the cycles in the system. And this is an illustration. This is 200 people in a circle. You can see these faint blue lines are the IOUs that have been sent around, and the green flashes are every time the system finds a loop and cancels out the debt. It's all very pretty, but it was still very small scale for me, a few hundreds of people. More recently, in January, February this year, we managed to get a much more powerful system with, well, this is an illustration with 1 million users, each with 50 IOUs, and this is actually running the simulation, so you can see this actually takes 140 minutes to do in real time, even on a powerful computer, and you can see the amount of debt eliminated going up to 99.1%, and the number of outstanding IOUs drops to less than a fraction of a percent. So this is, was looking reasonably promising. However, on the 9th of March, I had a real breakthrough, because I realised actually all of that debt cancellation by finding loops was a complete waste of time, because it's completely unnecessary. In effect, the only thing that's important is the net position of each user. And to prove that, we can actually reset the entire system with what I call a jubilee phase, where users with net negative positions do things for people with net positive positions so that they send IOUs back, and you can cancel out all the debt in the system. You can see this in the original demonstration here, because it turns out that the carpenter, the electrician, and the farmer can cancel out the baker. So here you go, 5 minus 5 minus 5 minus 1, cancel out to 11. The builder and the nurse can cancel the hairdresser, and the gardener and the teacher can cancel the teacher, the cleaner. And importantly, that's true irrespective of how much stuff was done previously. You can have everybody doing thousands of IOUs, but in the end, the only thing that matters is the net position. And you can cancel everything just by working on the net positions. So the other big thing was that I decided to drop using currencies and instead use a minute of human time as the measure rather than any financial thing. And so in the last few weeks, literally, and with a lot of help from Claude, I've set up a website which you can go and have a look at now if you want, IOUNet.org. And there you'll find various demos to try and convince you that this is actually workable. And what I'm going to do now is we'll go and have a look at this. So I don't want this. Oh, here we go. So start here. First step, let's do an IOU demo. This is a little demo system. I'm going to increase the number of users to 5 from 2. So we've got Carol and Dan and Alice, Emily and Bob, and they're all happily sending each other IOUs for various amounts. And you've got the type of activity here. And you can see at the end of sending 5 each, Carol's plus 371 minutes, Dan is minus 300, Alice, etc. Different values. Importantly, the sum of that has to be 0 because of the way the system is built. And you can prove that by doing what I call a jubilee, where at the end of a period of activity, we just cancel out any remaining net positions by Carol sending Dan an IOU, and Emily and Bob sending Emily, and Alice sending Emily. So now everybody is back at 0. And I can actually make the jubilee automatically happen by the time when we've processed a certain number of IOUs. And this really works very well. Let's increase the number of users to 500 and the number of IOUs for each one to 200, and recalculate. It's all done. It takes milliseconds basically, and you can see here the total amount. Everybody's back to 0, but the amount of cooperative activity that has been handled by the system, 21 million minutes of human time. Different people profited to different degrees. The minimum being 29,000 minutes to up to 58,000 minutes. But basically, it works extremely well. So have fun playing around with that demo. Next demo, it's the community engine. This is a system where you can try running the code locally on your machine. So you go here and you click on Add Engine. I'm going to add in using my machine here. Let's say add in 8 engines, each of which is processing a million users, and you can see now the system is processing IOUs. These are peta minutes since the thing started in the 15th of March. I've processed 18 billion years of human activity with this. And if you were to log in here and add you can do this with an iPhone. You can add in a motor on an iPhone, and you'll see the numbers go up. And the remarkable thing is the code is running on your browser. It's very efficient because here's the entire code. It's 23 lines of code. It's really, really cheap and runs really fast, even on a phone. Third demo. This is the planetary engine, which is actually running. It's been running for 30 days on my Mac Studio down in the office below. I'm actually simulating 10 billion users in real time. And why 10 billion? Well, it's more than the number of people on the planet, but the idea is it would include not just individuals, but also households and businesses and associations and local governments and international organizations and charities. They could all have an IOUNet an account. And you can see here that we've processed something like 40 billion human years of cooperation here, and this is the distribution of IOU net positions. So we've got people negative here and people positive here. The mean has to be at 0 by construction, but the distribution can be slightly asymmetrical. But very interestingly, every 2 hours I do a jubilee, which is where all 10 billion people send IOUs between each other to cancel all the net debt in the system. And so this is the number of active accounts. It drops down to 0 and then it builds up again. You can get a similar sort of idea for what's going on here with this other demo. This is with 5,000 people, and you can see each person is represented by a positive or negative net position, and every now and then there's a jubilee where everybody is reset to 0 again. We're actually processing about 20,000 IOUs every second, and this is the total amount of cooperative activity which has been handled. This is just with 5,000 people. Every time there's a jubilee, everybody collapses back to 0, and then we all start again. You can see this sort of steady state of cooperation going on, which is actually extremely pleasant to watch. Right, so let's now go back to my demos, and I'm going to show you another demo, which is a marketplace explorer. So I asked Claude to invent 4 million fictitious people in lots of different countries. Here they are. Let's go for the United Kingdom. I'm going to type in a postcode, let's say in Oxford, and we've randomly selected a fictitious person called Maya Toole, who's in Oxford. She does maths tutoring and cycling group leader. Those are the services that she's offering. Let's suppose that she was interested in having yoga lessons. Well, it turns out there are 4 people in her area who do yoga instruction. Let's imagine that she wants to have wants to contact Matthew Connolly. Let's contact Matthew. Hi, I'm interested in your yoga instruction service. Are you available? Send message. Matthew comes back with a message to say, yeah, I'm available. And then Mia sends another message to say, well, how about Saturday at 11 a.m.? Looking forward to it. She does that, and then Matthew, once the service has been done, she says, oh, okay, all done. That was 30 minutes of yoga instruction. Could you send me an IOU for 30 units? And she sends it, and there we got in her list of activities, you've got an IOU to Matthew Connolly for yoga instruction. So there you go. You can do this using your postcode as a way of finding people in your local community who could help you. So that's looking at a sort of individual level, but we can also do things at the group level. So again, let's find somebody else in Oxford, Amelia, and let's suppose that she's in a household with Oliver Parks. Let's create a household for them, and let's also form an association. Let's suppose that Amelia was interested in gardening, for instance. She could. Here's a list of people in Oxford who are interested in gardening. So you can add in these people here. Quite a lot of them, but we're going to send invitations to these people. And now we've got our two groups, one being the household, Amelia and Olivia, who are sending IOUs between each other. This is now actually running in real time. You'll notice there's also a group for the household. Not only the individuals, but the group itself has an identity, because the group can send IOUs to individuals. And here for the gardening group, again, we've got all these people doing various things for each other. And as in all of these situations, I can do the Jubilee trick, which is where you can see all these net positions here. And I can run the Jubilee, and there you go, everybody back to zero. That's because different people did things for others to cancel out what they owed to the other person. So there we go. That sort of tells you where we are at the moment, and once you've played with that, you might decide, oh, this is really good. I'd like to have a go. So then you would have the option of actually joining IOUNet. Currently, there's only me in it, but hopefully that's going to change. You create your own identity. You say the things the services that you're prepared to offer to others, what your rates are. You can select also the things that you're interested in, so that people can find you to help them, and also collective things that you want to do. These all go into your profile and so on. Right. So let's go back to my keynote presentation. So we've seen the various demos that you can play with. A word now about the data formats that I'm using here. So each user is actually defined by a 64-bit descriptor, which includes the user number, which will actually go up to 17 billion. That's more than the number of people on the planet, so there's plenty of scope here. But it includes lots of different types. It's not just individuals. You can have associations and charities and schools and governments and so on. They can each have their own IOUNet identity. You also have the country as a descriptor, and the postcode. And I must admit, this postcode thing has turned out to be very nice, because you can, in the UK, for instance, and the USA, there are 42,000 postcodes which allow you to specify a particular locality. In France, there are 6,000, and so on. In addition to the user description at that level, you can also have a user profile, which might include birth year and sex, but this is totally arbitrary. You don't have to provide that information if you don't want to. And then the IOUs themselves are actually a 40-byte transaction descriptor, which has the source, the person sending the IOU, the destination, the time, the value, and the sort of category of activity. The value actually, I've said float here, but actually it's an integer value. The minimum you can have is 1 minute. You can't have half a minute. So it's all integer values for in IOUNet. And importantly, although a user might keep a track of the people that they've been exchanging with, that's not stored in the system. The system can keep aggregate data about where activity has been going on and what sort of activity is being covered by IOUNet, and maybe certain demographic information, but it doesn't have information about who sent what to who. Interestingly, I've got a 1 gigabit fiber connection at my house here, and given that it's 40 bytes per transaction, this actually allows me to do about 3 million IOUs per second processed from my house. That's that's a lot of all the activity that could be going on the entire planet. But I'm not suggesting that I do everything here, because you can have copies of running in different countries and so on. Right, a few other points. Firstly, this is very important. For me, any activity that is 100% done by AI or by robots has no value in use, because there's no human activity involved. So this is a way of ensuring that humans don't get replaced. They will always have value, because only humans can be in the system. That said, a human with AI or robotic support can actually be far more efficient than the 1 U per minute figure. And a perfect illustration of that is the fact that in the last, literally just in a few weeks, thanks to Anthropic's Claude, I've managed to get all this website and all the code written. I didn't write a line. I mean, it was all done by Claude. And we've joked between Claude and me that everything that Claude has done has no value in IOUNet. It's all zero. Of course, me plus Claude is worth, hopefully, quite a lot. The other thing that you've already seen, I hope, is the incredible efficiency of the code. I've got 10 million users being run for now a month on a single computer downstairs, and you can do this on your phone. I mean, the code itself is incredibly rapid, and it allows you to have a very detailed analysis of economic activity. For instance, in the planetary simulation, I actually log activity by location with great detail, if you want. This is a vast improvement on typical measures like gross domestic product, which only counts money. Here we can get extremely sophisticated analysis. Here we've got the geographic activity by continent and then by country. You can go to France and look in Occitanie and Haute-Garonne, where I live, and you can see in real time the amount of activity gradually increasing. You can do the same thing by category. You can look at, the fact that it's this is all simulated, but home and garden activity, including childcare, is particularly important. You can also do it by entity type. I mean, I've been talking mainly about individuals, but it's also groups and governments and non-profits and all the rest of it can also have accounts, and they can be logged. And we can do demographics as well, age range, male, female, and so on, if people are happy to provide that information. All of this is provided for free. You don't need to do market research. Everything just is provided, and anybody interested in knowing whether particular places are succeeding more in developing, let's say, childcare and carer for the elderly, it will be immediately visible. So the key messages are that I think human cooperation can be done with no money in the system. You don't need money to get people to cooperate. IOUNet would allow individuals to help each other and allow actually people to live fulfilling lives, because everybody has a certain number of minutes every day, and you can choose how you want to spend those minutes. You can be doing things for yourself, or it can be doing things in cooperation with other people. IOUNet allows that cooperative activity to be fostered. It's also, I think, the end of what Dave Graeber called bullshit jobs in his book a few years ago. He found that if you ask people, is the work that they do to get paid of any value, 50% of people apparently say no. They're doing something which earns them enough money to pay the rent and buy food, but they don't think it is of any real value. So in a system like IOUNet, people would stop doing those sort of things and concentrate their time on doing things which they think is important and which other people think are important. And that's essentially the end of using GDP growth as the objective of society. No, increasing the amount of financial transactions is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to increase the quality of people's lives. Could an IOUNet system replace the current financial system? Well, my answer to that is that, perhaps, but actually it's not necessary. This could all run in parallel with the current, money-based system. And indeed, the financial wealth of billionaires would not be affected by this. They keep their yachts and private aircraft and their chateau. I mean, there's nothing to do with this. But it does mean that people that don't have financial resources can all contribute and benefit from the system. And that's true even in a country which has no money whatsoever. You can use IOUNet to foster cooperation. And in the end, a person's value is not measured by their financial wealth and how much they earn. It's much more a question of how much good they do for their fellow humans. Importantly, IOUNet can start incredibly small. I mean, literally 2 people in a household could actually get the system running. But then it would be able to expand to include communities and associations and governments and international organizations, if you like. And actually, it's ready to go. I mean, in the last few weeks, I've got the website going and all the demos and everything. You can join IOUNet today if you want. And to make life easier, I've got Claude to translate the stuff into a whole set of different languages, including English and French, but also Japanese and Chinese and Farsi and all the rest of it. And so there are FAQs that you can read to get answers to other questions. But if you have other questions, do send them to me. I'll be very interested to hear your opinions. So there you go. It's ready to go. What's going to happen with it, I don't know. It depends whether people find this interesting or not. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. I hope you found that interesting.